Here down is what's called a shopping center, but it's a tremendous amount of beads. Quaint little statue immortalizing the shoe shine guys like I showed earlier. I'm shooting through an existing... I'm inside a room right now with rich wood carving on the top. A rather impressive chair. I'm inside the courtyard now of the convent, and it is perhaps the richest that I have seen, convent or otherwise. Notice that entire second story appears to be all of carved and turned wood. And the first story seems to be murals or paintings, and then a tremendous amount of varietal tile work. Much of it seems to be just decorative tiles, but some of it have icons which I'm pretty sure are religious. And these do look like paintings because they're on some kind of a substrate, canvas or whatever. Here's a panel on one of the pillars going up to the stairway. I wonder who and when these were made. Would there have been nuns who were artistic and allowed to make such things? Develop the craft? Here a lovely stairway, not particularly steep. Again, notice the detailed tile work. My guess is the enthusiasm might have dropped off rapidly after the first few days the nun entered this cloister. Imagine the work implied by all of this tile around the columns. It would seem that the church had same kinds of resources, in other words, the same wealth as did the government itself. Interesting how the layout of the narrow band at the top, the large band at the bottom, and the icons at the top seem almost to allude to Teotihuacan and that culture in Mexico. And notice here the band between the two large squares of just design tiles. Here are tiles with perhaps some kind of message. Here, the wall of large squares separated by narrow bands is interrupted by a large rectangle with a rectangle within it and a tile painting within that. Some of the detail, Christ carrying a cross, but notice the bird perched on it. And here the Christ on the upper right reaching down with his right hand to touch something on the head of the Christ at the lower left. The lamb at the bottom of Christ's staff, or cross really. These characters seem more mestizo, Aztec, whatever. These Greek in illusion. And look at the facial expressions of these two people. What do they symbolize? The symbolism on this wall may be every bit as rich as the symbolism that you would see in the Mayan and the Aztec artifacts, wall drawings and so forth. 1606. Just a close-up look of 4 tiles. Another set of 4. Quite simple in comparison. And here a close look at the 2 bands, 3 bands really of tiles that go around at least the bottom. The band on the top, that narrow band, goes apparently all around the entire wall. Another smaller courtyard and much simpler, but very tranquil. Just to look at some architectural features in a stairway. Some very nice smells emanating through that doorway from the private area inside. I'm now down in the tomb, which again has outstanding and almost looks new tile work throughout. Now there's what appears to be like a manhole cover on top of this platform. Whether that's where the remains are actually buried, I don't know. Imagine the work and the skill required to create all of these tiles and then to install them. Some appear cleaned or newer than the others. And perhaps that's done because they had to be replaced, or perhaps they're trying to illustrate what it looked like when it was new versus how time affects it. And what is the symbology of these heads reproduced in 2 bands, one on the top, one on the bottom, the full length of this room, both sides. The entryway is quite narrow here and low. So much work was required to build this and then to maintain it. I just wonder to what degree, if at all, the nuns contributed. I should think that even a half-dead brain would have a lust for some kind of diversion. Here the pattern has changed to alternating horizontal layers or rows. There doesn't seem to be any design logic. It's just each panel is filled with a design. Oftentimes there's one design, and oftentimes that design is repeated in other panels. Even the tile entryway has an interesting design, the optical illusion of 3 dimension. This is an old section several blocks away from the town square, but probably prey to restoration at some point. Imagine what it was like when it was first built, when the area was new and perhaps classy. This is Santa Rosa's sanctuary. Piece of Christian mythology. And these are apparently the remnants of that tree. Pretty little space. Here again, the architectural mix of curves and lines, to me, one intriguing thing about churches. This, ironically, is a very modern-looking church. interesting entry floor. This church is interesting on the inside because of almost the complete lack of Baroque affectation. Even the altar is dominated in a living room type of display of pictures. And the altar, although very grand and opulent, still seems to have a reasonable proportion. Notice the almost museum-like display, the restraint. Even the lack of stained glass is interesting. Here is somewhat of an allusion to the Baroque look of other churches, almost all other churches. You just come in here and there's one shop after another and buy all the icons and idols that you would like.